Welcome to Epic English Stories, where every tale transforms your English while transforming your mind. Picture this. You're standing at the crossroads of possibility, holding an idea that could change everything. But here's what nobody tells you. Creativity isn't some magical gift bestowed upon the chosen few. It's not about being born with a special spark or having lightning strike twice. The truth is far more empowering than that. Right now, as you listen to these words, you possess the same raw material that built empires, launched revolutions, and created masterpieces. The difference between those who create and those who simply consume isn't talent, it's choice. Every single day, you make hundreds of small decisions that either nurture your creative spirit or slowly suffocate it. Today's story will shatter everything you thought you knew about originality. We'll journey through the minds of breakthrough thinkers, failed visionaries, and unlikely heroes who dared to see the world differently. By the end, you'll have a complete roadmap to unlock your creative potential. But first, I want you to do something brave. In the comments below, share one idea you've been too scared to pursue. What's that voice in your head been talking you out of? Let's start this journey together. Most people believe creativity requires reckless abandon, that you must burn your bridges and leap into the unknown. This couldn't be further from the truth. Consider the founders of Warby Parker, the company that revolutionized eyewear shopping. These weren't wild risk-takers gambling everything on a dream. They were methodical students who kept their backup plans while quietly building something extraordinary. What made them different wasn't their willingness to risk everything. It was their refusal to accept the status quo. While others simply accepted that buying glasses meant expensive trips to the optometrist and overpriced frames, these students asked a simple but powerful question. Why does it have to be this way? This is where real creativity begins. Not with grand gestures, but with small acts of rebellion against the ordinary. Think about something as mundane as choosing your web browser. Most people stick with whatever comes pre-installed on their computers. But research reveals something fascinating. Those who take the extra step to download an alternative browser tend to be more successful in their careers, stay longer at their jobs, and demonstrate higher performance levels. Why? Because they've developed what I call the default rejection mindset. Instead of passively accepting the first option presented, they pause, question, and actively seek better alternatives. This isn't about browsers. It's about approaching life with curiosity rather than compliance. The pathway to originality starts with seeing familiar things through fresh eyes. Walk through your daily routine and ask uncomfortable questions. Why do meetings always happen in conference rooms? Why do we check email first thing in the morning? Why do stores arrange products the way they do? Each question is a doorway to possibility. But here's the secret that separates dreamers from doers. You don't need to be fearless to be original. Fear is actually creativity's companion, not its enemy. The goal isn't to eliminate fear, it's to move forward despite it. Every breakthrough began with someone feeling scared, but choosing to act anyway. Consider the daily choices that shape your creative capacity. Do you automatically reach for your phone when you're bored? Or do you let your mind wander? Do you take the same route to work every day? Or do you occasionally explore new paths? Do you order your usual meal? Or do you sometimes try something unexpected? These micro decisions might seem insignificant, but they're actually training your brain for bigger moments of creative courage. Each time you choose the unfamiliar over the familiar, you're strengthening your originality muscles. You're teaching yourself that there's always another way, another option, another possibility. The most successful creative individuals aren't those who make one giant leap. They're those who make countless small steps away from the conventional path. They understand that originality isn't about dramatic departures from reality. It's about gradual shifts in perspective that compound over time. Start today by identifying one default setting in your life, something you do automatically without thinking. Maybe it's the apps on your phone, the route you take to work, or the way you organize your workspace. Make one small change. Notice how it feels to break from routine. Pay attention to the new thoughts and possibilities that emerge. Remember, every world-changing innovation began with someone looking at something ordinary and asking, What if we did this differently? Your next breakthrough might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for you to question what everyone else accepts as inevitable. Here's a truth that will revolutionize how you approach creativity. Great ideas are terrible at disguising themselves. The concepts that eventually change the world often appear ridiculous, impractical, or downright stupid when they first emerge. This creates one of creativity's greatest paradoxes. The ideas worth pursuing are often the ones that seem least promising. Consider the story of Seinfeld, the television show famously described as being about nothing. Network executives hated it. Focus groups rejected it. Industry experts predicted its swift cancellation. Yet it became one of the most influential comedies in television history, generating billions in revenue and reshaping entertainment culture. On the flip side, remember the Segway? This revolutionary personal transportation device captured the imagination of tech visionaries and secured massive investment. Experts predicted it would transform urban mobility. Instead, it became a punchline, a symbol of innovation disconnect from real-world needs. These contrasting stories reveal a fundamental truth about creative judgment. Proximity breeds blindness. The closer you are to your creation, the less capable you become of evaluating its true potential. This isn't a character flaw, it's a cognitive limitation that affects everyone from first-time entrepreneurs to Nobel Prize winners. Creative individuals consistently overestimate their weaker ideas while underestimating their strongest ones. They fall in love with concepts that feel innovative to them, but fail to consider whether they solve real problems for real people. Meanwhile, their truly breakthrough ideas feel too obvious or simple to be valuable. So how do you navigate this creative blind spot? The answer is simultaneously simple and challenging. Quantity leads to quality. The most reliable path to great ideas is generating lots of ideas. Thomas Edison didn't succeed because his first invention was brilliant. He succeeded because he was willing to fail 999 times to achieve one breakthrough. This principle applies beyond famous inventors. In every field, the individuals who produce the most work also produce the most masterpieces. They don't have higher success rates. They have higher attempt rates. They understand that creativity is fundamentally a numbers game where persistence trumps perfection. But here's where most people get stuck. They're waiting for the perfect idea before they act. This is backwards thinking. Great ideas rarely arrive fully formed. They evolve through iteration, feedback, and real-world testing. The idea you start with is almost never the idea you end with, and that's exactly how it should be. Traditional gatekeepers, executives, investors, focus groups are particularly poor at recognizing revolutionary potential. They evaluate new concepts by comparing them to existing successes, which creates an inherent bias toward incremental improvement rather than paradigm shifts. They can spot better, but struggle to identify different. This is why peer feedback from other creators often proves more valuable than expert opinions. Fellow creators understand the creative process while maintaining enough emotional distance to offer honest assessment. They recognize innovation without the personal investment that clouds judgment. However, even brilliant people make terrible creative decisions when they venture outside their expertise. A tech genius might completely misjudge a restaurant concept. A literary master might fail to recognize musical genius. Success in one domain doesn't automatically transfer creative judgment to another. The most dangerous trap is overconfidence based on past victories. Previous success can actually hinder future creativity by making you less receptive to feedback and more convinced of your infallible judgment. The very confidence that helped you succeed initially can become the arrogance that ensures your next failure. This suggests a counterintuitive approach to creative development. Embrace uncertainty, seek diverse perspectives, and remain suspicious of your own judgment. Create systems that force you to gather feedback before you're emotionally invested in specific outcomes. Start tracking your ideas without judgment. Generate multiple options before committing to any single direction. Test concepts quickly and cheaply before investing significant resources. Most importantly, Remember that your initial reaction to an idea, whether excitement or skepticism, is probably wrong. The goal isn't to become better at predicting which ideas will succeed. The goal is to become more comfortable with uncertainty while increasing your creative output. Let the market, not your intuition, determine which ideas deserve pursuit. Having a brilliant idea is only the beginning of the creative journey. The real challenge lies in sharing that idea with others who have the power to support, fund, or implement it. This is where many potentially world-changing concepts die. Not because they lack merit, but because they're poorly communicated to the right people at the right time. Carmen Medina's story perfectly illustrates this challenge. Working within a government intelligence agency, she envisioned a revolutionary information-sharing platform that would connect different departments and enhance national security. Today, such systems are standard practice. But when Carmen first proposed the idea, it was met with fear, resistance, and outright rejection. The problem wasn't her concept, it was her approach. Carmen made the classic mistake of assuming that good ideas sell themselves. She underestimated the importance of credibility, timing, and social capital in the innovation process. Great ideas need great messengers, and becoming a great messenger requires more than just having great ideas. Credibility is earned through consistency, not brilliance. Before people will listen to your revolutionary concepts, they need to trust your judgment on conventional matters. Carmen learned this lesson the hard way. Only after she established herself as a reliable, competent professional did others become willing to consider her more radical proposals. This reveals a paradox of organizational creativity. You must prove yourself within the existing system before you can effectively challenge that system. Rebels without credibility are simply dismissed as troublemakers. Rebels with proven track records become visionaries worth hearing. When you finally do share your unconventional ideas, consider starting with their weaknesses rather than their strengths. This counterintuitive approach accomplishes several important things simultaneously. First, it demonstrates intellectual honesty and self-awareness. Second, it disarms potential critics by acknowledging their likely objections up front. Third, it frames you as someone who thinks strategically about implementation challenges, not just creative possibilities. One entrepreneur revolutionized his pitch meetings by beginning each presentation with the top 5 reasons you shouldn't invest in this company. This bold opening immediately captured attention while establishing him as someone who understood both the opportunities and the risks. Investors relaxed their defensive postures and became more receptive to his ultimate message. Remember that human psychology works against rapid acceptance of truly novel ideas. We're hardwired to prefer familiar concepts over foreign ones. This means you'll likely need to present your idea multiple times before it gains traction. Each exposure makes the concept feel slightly less strange and slightly more possible. The key is finding the right balance between persistence and patience. Push too hard, and you'll trigger resistance. Give up too easily, and you'll abandon ideas that might have succeeded with better timing or presentation. Learn to read the room and adjust your approach accordingly. Consider your audience carefully when selecting who to approach first. Sometimes the most supportive person isn't the obvious choice. Look for individuals who demonstrate intellectual curiosity, who ask challenging questions, or who have previously championed unconventional approaches. These people are more likely to see potential in truly innovative concepts. Gender, age, and other demographic factors can unfortunately influence how ideas are received, regardless of their merit. Women and minorities often face additional skepticism when presenting bold concepts. If you face such biases, consider framing your ideas in terms of organizational goals rather than personal vision. Show how your concept advances shared objectives rather than individual ambitions. The Trojan horse strategy can be particularly effective for radical ideas. Present something familiar on the surface while embedding your innovation within. Once people accept the outer concept, you can gradually reveal its more transformative elements. This approach allows others to mentally adjust to your idea in stages rather than all at once. Building coalitions is crucial for sustaining momentum beyond initial presentations. Identify potential allies who might benefit from your concept's success. Help them understand what's in it for them. People support ideas not just because they're good in abstract terms, but because they see personal or professional advantages. Document your journey carefully. Keep records of who you've spoken with, what objections they've raised, and how you've refined your presentation over time. This information becomes invaluable as you iterate your approach and identify patterns and feedback. Most importantly, stay connected to your core purpose while remaining flexible about implementation details. The specific form your idea takes matters less than the underlying problem it solves or opportunity it creates. Be willing to adapt, collaborate, and even let others receive credit if it means your concept ultimately succeeds. Remember that sharing ideas effectively is itself a creative skill that improves with practice. Each presentation, each conversation, each rejection teaches you something valuable about communication, timing, and human psychology. Embrace this learning process as enthusiastically as you embrace the creative process itself. Everything you've been told about timing and creativity is wrong. We live in a culture obsessed with speed, where first to market is treated as the ultimate advantage and procrastination is considered the enemy of progress. But some of history's greatest innovations emerged not from rushing to action, but from strategic patience and productive delay. Consider Martin Luther King Jr.'s most famous speech. The words that would inspire generations and change the course of history weren't crafted weeks in advance through careful planning. Instead, Dr. King was still revising his remarks the night before the March on Washington. That famous "I Have a Dream" section, it wasn't even in his prepared text. It emerged spontaneously, drawing from ideas that had been percolating in his mind for months. This illustrates what researchers call strategic procrastination, the conscious decision to delay completion while allowing ideas to develop naturally in your subconscious mind. When you start a project, but don't immediately rush to finish it, your brain continues working on it in the background. New connections form, better solutions emerge, and creative insights surface at unexpected moments. Leonardo da Vinci mastered this approach centuries ago. The Mona Lisa took him over 4 years to complete, not because he was lazy or indecisive, but because he understood that great art requires time to evolve. While working on the painting, he pursued other projects, conducted scientific experiments, and made engineering discoveries. Each of these seemingly unrelated activities informed his artistic vision and contributed to the masterpiece's ultimate impact. The myth of first-mover advantage has misled countless entrepreneurs and creators. Yes, being first sometimes provides benefits, but being better often matters more than being first. The companies that ultimately dominate markets are rarely the pioneers. They're the settlers who learn from early mistakes and improve upon initial concepts. Google wasn't the first search engine. It was just better than the ones that came before. Facebook wasn't the first social network. It succeeded by learning from Friendster's and MySpace's limitations. The iPhone wasn't the first smartphone. Apple simply created a more intuitive and elegant solution than existing alternatives. This pattern repeats across industries and throughout history. The first movers take the biggest risks, make the most mistakes, and often exhaust their resources before finding sustainable success. The settlers observe these struggles, identify improvement opportunities, and enter the market with refined solutions. Age bias in creativity is another destructive myth that needs dismantling. Society celebrates young innovators while overlooking the reality that creativity can flourish at any stage of life. Some people generate breakthrough ideas quickly in their youth, while others need decades of experience before their most significant contributions emerge. Consider the different creative timelines that lead to success. Some creators are conceptual innovators who peak early with bold, paradigm-shifting ideas. Others are experimental innovators who build their masterpieces gradually through years of refinement and iteration. Both approaches can produce world-changing results. They just operate on different timescales. The pressure to innovate quickly often produces shallow thinking and premature solutions. When you're racing against arbitrary deadlines, you're more likely to settle for obvious answers rather than discovering unexpected possibilities. Real breakthrough thinking requires time for ideas to mature, evolve, and integrate with other concepts. Strategic delay also allows market conditions to become more favorable for your innovation. Technologies that seem impossible today might become routine tomorrow. Social attitudes that resist change now might embrace transformation later. Economic conditions that make funding difficult currently might improve dramatically next year. However, productive procrastination is very different from simple avoidance. The key is maintaining active engagement with your project while allowing flexible timing for completion. Keep thinking about the challenge, gathering relevant information, and making connections between different ideas. Just don't force premature closure. Set up systems that support this creative incubation process. Keep a notebook for capturing insights as they emerge. Create quiet spaces where your mind can wander freely. Expose yourself to diverse experiences that might unexpectedly inform your primary project. Read books outside your field. Travel to unfamiliar places. Talk with people who see the world differently. Pay attention to when your best ideas typically arrive. Many creators find that solutions emerge during routine activities like walking, showering, or doing mundane tasks. These moments of relaxed attention often produce insights that focused effort cannot achieve. Build such moments into your schedule rather than filling every minute with structured activity. Learn to distinguish between deadline pressure and creative pressure. External deadlines imposed by others might be negotiable or artificial. The internal pressure to create something meaningful, however, is often worth honoring even if it means taking longer than initially planned. Remember that the goal isn't to delay indefinitely. It's to optimize timing for maximum creative impact. Sometimes quick action is essential, particularly when opportunities are genuinely time-sensitive. The skill lies in recognizing when speed serves your creative goals and when patience would produce better results. Trust the creative process even when it doesn't follow conventional timelines. Your most important contributions might require more time than you initially expected, and that's perfectly okay. Quality endures long after speed is forgotten. Creativity is never a solo journey, despite our cultural obsession with the lone genius narrative. Every significant innovation requires a network of supporters, collaborators, and advocates who help transform individual vision into collective reality. Yet building these creative coalitions presents unique challenges that can either accelerate your impact or completely derail your efforts. The women's suffrage movement provide a masterclass in both the power and peril of creative coalition building. Early leaders like Lucy Stone, Susan B. Anthony, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton shared the revolutionary goal of securing voting rights for women. They possess complementary skills, overlapping networks, and burning passion for their cause. Everything should have aligned perfectly for collaborative success. Instead, their movement nearly destroyed itself through internal conflict. The problem wasn't lack of shared purpose. It was an abundance of tactical disagreements that escalated into personal warfare. Anthony and Stanton adopted more radical approaches, even forming temporary alliances with racist groups to advance their agenda. Stone found these compromises morally unacceptable and broke away to form a competing organization. This split illustrates what researchers call the narcissism of small differences, the tendency for similar groups to fight more fiercely with each other than with completely different groups. When you're 90% aligned with someone, that remaining 10% difference can feel more threatening than 100% opposition from others. It's easier to dismiss complete opponents than to reconcile with near allies who challenge your specific approach. The fragmentation weakened both wings of the suffrage movement for decades. Resources were wasted on internal battles rather than external progress. Public support became confused by competing messages and fractured leadership. What could have been a unified force for change became a cautionary tale about coalition management. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: the Women's Christian Temperance Union, a group primarily focused on prohibiting alcohol consumption. On the surface, voting rights and alcohol prohibition seem unrelated. But the WCDU discovered that both movements could benefit from similar tactical approaches: grassroots organizing, moral persuasion, and legislative lobbying. This alliance succeeded because it was based on shared methods rather than identical goals. The groups didn't need to agree on everything. They just needed to work together effectively on specific initiatives. This strategic compatibility often matters more than philosophical alignment when building functional coalitions. When introducing revolutionary ideas to skeptical audiences, consider the Trojan horse strategy that makes radical concepts more palatable. Present familiar packaging while embedding transformative content within. One military innovator wanted the Navy to embrace Silicon Valley technologies and methodologies. Rather than proposing comprehensive digital transformation, he started by requesting permission to purchase simple software tools. This small initial request served as a foot in the door. Once the Navy agreed to minor technological adoption, it became easier to propose more significant changes. Each successful small step built credibility and comfort with larger transformations. Revolutionary change disguised as evolutionary progress. The key is linking your innovative concepts to values and concerns your audience already embraces. Instead of asking people to abandon their existing beliefs, show how your ideas actually advance their current priorities more effectively. This approach reduces psychological resistance while building genuine support. Working with frenemies, people who are sometimes allies and sometimes competitors, presents unique psychological challenges. These relationships create constant uncertainty about motives, loyalty, and strategic positioning. The emotional energy required to navigate such complexity often exceeds the benefits gained from cooperation. Consider focusing instead on converting strong opponents into strong supporters. People who initially resist your ideas but eventually embrace them often become your most effective advocates. They understand the objections others will raise because they've experienced those same doubts. Their conversion stories provide powerful social proof that skeptics can change their minds. When building coalitions, aim for the Goldilocks zone of novelty. Ideas that are too radical attract only true believers who already think like you. Ideas that are too conventional fail to generate excitement among innovation-minded supporters. The sweet spot lies in concepts that feel familiar enough to be approachable but different enough to be exciting. This balance allows you to build bridges between different constituencies rather than preaching only to existing converts. Your coalition can include both progressive early adopters and pragmatic mainstream supporters if your ideas are calibrated correctly. The suffrage movement eventually reunited under new leadership that prioritized strategic unity over tactical purity. Leaders recognized that their shared vision mattered more than their specific disagreements. They developed processes for managing internal disputes without allowing them to destroy external effectiveness. Building creative coalitions requires emotional intelligence alongside strategic thinking. You must navigate personality conflicts, manage competing egos, and maintain group focus on shared objectives. These skills are just as important as the creative vision that initially brings people together. Start by identifying potential allies who might benefit from your idea's success, even if their reasons differ from yours. Map out the landscape of stakeholders who could either support or obstruct your progress. Develop specific value propositions for different groups rather than assuming one message will resonate with everyone. Remember that coalition building is itself a creative process requiring experimentation, adaptation, and persistence. The group that launches your idea might be very different from the group that ultimately implements it. Stay flexible about partnerships while remaining committed to your core, creative purpose. The roots of creativity run deeper than talent, education, or opportunity. They extend back to our earliest family experiences and the subtle dynamics that shaped our willingness to challenge convention. How we were raised, our position among siblings, and the values our parents emphasized all contributed to either nurturing or suppressing our natural innovative instincts. Birth order research reveals fascinating patterns about risk-taking and original thinking. Studies of professional baseball players show that younger siblings are significantly more likely to attempt stolen bases, a high-risk, high-reward play that requires split-second decision-making and comfort with failure. This isn't coincidence. It reflects deeper psychological patterns that extend far beyond sports. Jackie Robinson, the legendary player who broke baseball's color barrier, exemplified this dynamic perfectly. As the youngest child in his family, he developed the boldness and resilience necessary to challenge one of America's most entrenched social institutions. His willingness to endure hostility, criticism, and physical danger while maintaining peak performance reflected character traits often cultivated in younger siblings. Why do younger children tend toward greater originality? Several factors converge to create this pattern. First, they're born into families where older siblings have already claimed certain roles and achievements, forcing younger children to find alternative paths to recognition and success. When conventional approaches are already occupied, innovation becomes necessary for individual distinction. Parents also tend to relax their rules and expectations with subsequent children. The intense anxiety that accompanies first-time parenting often gives way to greater confidence and flexibility. This creates an environment where younger children experience more freedom to experiment, make mistakes, and develop independent thinking patterns. However, birth order alone doesn't determine creative capacity. The way parents respond to children's behavior matters far more than family position. Traditional authoritarian approaches that rely heavily on rules, punishments, and commands tend to suppress the questioning mindset that fuels innovation. Children learn to comply rather than think critically about why rules exist or whether they serve useful purposes. More effective approaches focus on explanation and moral reasoning. Instead of simply stating "don't do that," parents can explain the consequences of actions and help children understand how their choices affect others. This develops internal moral reasoning rather than external compliance, creating adults who can navigate complex ethical decisions independently. Consider the difference between these parenting responses to a child taking another child's toy. "Give that back right now, because I said so," versus, "How do you think Sarah feels when you take her toy without asking? What would you want her to do if she took something of yours?" The second approach builds empathy, perspective-taking, and problem-solving skills that serve creative thinking throughout life. The language parents use to praise children also profoundly impacts their future willingness to take creative risks. Praising character, "You are such a helpful person," proves more effective than praising specific actions. "That was a helpful thing you did." Character-based praise helps children internalize positive qualities as part of their identity, making them more likely to act consistently with those qualities even when no one is watching. This principle extends to creative qualities as well. Telling a child, "You are creative," or "You're someone who thinks of new solutions," is more powerful than simply praising individual creative acts. It helps them see innovation as a core part of who they are rather than something they occasionally do. Role models play an equally crucial role in shaping creative development. These can be real people in children's lives, parents, teachers, coaches, or community members who demonstrate innovative thinking and principled action. Branch Rickey, the Brooklyn Dodgers executive who recruited Jackie Robinson, served as this kind of mentor, providing both strategic guidance and moral support during an extraordinarily challenging period. But role models don't need to be physically present to influence creative development. Books, films, and stories about original thinkers can inspire children to see unconventional paths as both possible and admirable. Exposure to diverse narratives about people who challenged the status quo, overcame obstacles, and created positive change helps children envision themselves as potential changemakers. The most effective parents and mentors don't just tell stories about creativity, they model it in their own lives. They demonstrate curiosity by asking questions about how things work. They show flexibility by adapting plans when circumstances change. They exhibit courage by standing up for their values, even when it's uncomfortable or costly. They also normalize failure as part of the creative process rather than something to be avoided at all costs. Children who see adults experimenting, failing, learning, and trying again develop healthier relationships with risk and uncertainty. They understand that setbacks are temporary obstacles rather than permanent judgments about their capabilities. Creating environments that foster originality requires balancing structure with freedom. Children need enough stability and security to feel safe taking risks, but they also need enough flexibility to explore unconventional approaches. This might mean having family rules about treating others with respect while allowing individual expression in areas like clothing choices, room decoration, or extracurricular activities. Family discussions that encourage different perspectives and respectful disagreement also build creative thinking skills. When children see that adults can hold opposing views while maintaining loving relationships, they learn that challenging ideas doesn't threaten connection. This lesson proves invaluable later when they need to advocate for innovative approaches in professional or social contexts. Remember that fostering creativity isn't about pushing children toward artistic pursuits. It's about developing their capacity to see problems from multiple angles, generate novel solutions, and have the courage to implement their ideas. These skills serve them regardless of their eventual career paths or life choices. The relationship between organizational culture and innovation is far more complex than most leaders realize. Strong cultures aren't automatically creativity killers, and weak cultures don't necessarily foster breakthrough thinking. The key lies not in cultural strength, but in what specific values and behaviors that culture actively promotes or suppresses. Polaroid's story perfectly illustrates how even innovation-focused cultures can become innovation obstacles under the wrong conditions. Edwin Land built a company culture obsessed with breakthrough technology and revolutionary products. For decades, this culture produced remarkable innovations that created entirely new markets and consumer behaviors. Instant photography seemed like magic when it first appeared, and Polaroid dominated this space completely. But when digital photography emerged, that same strong culture became a massive liability. Land and his leadership team were so invested in their existing technology paradigm that they couldn't envision a future built on different principles. The culture that once embraced radical innovation now rejected it when innovation threatened their core identity and business model. The problem wasn't cultural strength, it was cultural rigidity. Leaders became so convinced of their own infallibility that they stopped listening to alternative perspectives. Engineers who suggested exploring digital alternatives were marginalized or ignored. Market signals that contradicted leadership assumptions were dismissed as temporary anomalies or competitor desperation. This pattern repeats across industries and throughout business history. Companies that achieve massive success often develop cultures of hubris rather than cultures of curiosity. Past victories become future blindness as organizations become more committed to defending their previous choices than exploring new possibilities. Contrast this with Bridgewater Associates, the investment firm famous for its radical transparency culture. This organization deliberately cultivates an environment where challenging authority isn't just permitted, it's mandatory. Employees are expected to disagree openly with senior leadership when they believe better approaches exist. Remaining silent in the face of perceived problems is actually considered a cultural violation. Bridgewater calls this approach idea meritocracy, the belief that the best ideas should prevail regardless of their source or the seniority of the person proposing them. This isn't about being confrontational for its own sake. It's about creating systematic processes that surface diverse perspectives before important decisions are made. This culture produces remarkable results because it prevents the groupthink that destroys so many organizations. When everyone is expected to contribute their authentic thoughts rather than simply agreeing with leadership, better solutions emerge through collaborative refinement rather than individual genius. However, most organizations try to capture these benefits through superficial techniques that actually undermine their stated goals. The classic example is appointing a devil's advocate, whose job is to argue against proposed initiatives just to identify potential problems. This approach fails because everyone knows it's performative rather than authentic. The devil's advocate isn't expressing genuine concerns. They're playing an assigned role. Real disagreement carries emotional weight and personal conviction that role-playing cannot replicate. Authentic dissent feels different from scripted opposition, and that difference matters enormously for creative thinking. Another common mistake is leadership rhetoric that sounds supportive of innovation but actually discourages it. "Don't bring me problems, bring me solutions" might seem empowering, but it actually creates barriers to creative problem solving. This approach assumes that individuals can fully understand complex problems in isolation and develop optimal solutions without collaboration. In reality, most significant organizational challenges require collective intelligence to solve effectively. The person who first identifies a problem might not have the expertise, resources, or perspective necessary to develop the best solution. By requiring complete solutions before problems can be raised, leaders miss opportunities for collaborative innovation and early problem intervention. More effective leaders encourage problem identification as a separate, valuable activity from solution development. They create forums where people can raise concerns, share observations, and highlight emerging challenges without being required to present fully formed answers. These leaders understand that problem recognition is itself a crucial skill that should be rewarded and cultivated. Building genuinely innovative cultures requires leaders who model intellectual humility alongside strategic confidence. They must demonstrate comfort with uncertainty, willingness to change direction based on new information, and genuine curiosity about alternative approaches. Their teams watch these behaviors more carefully than they listen to leadership speeches about innovation. This means admitting mistakes quickly and publicly, asking questions that reveal genuine ignorance rather than rhetorical points, and celebrating failed experiments that generate valuable learning. It means promoting people who challenge conventional thinking rather than just those who execute existing strategies flawlessly. It also means designing systems and processes that institutionalize creative thinking rather than depending on individual heroics. This might include regular, pre-mortem sessions where teams imagine how current plans might fail and develop contingency strategies. It could involve rotating job assignments that expose people to different perspectives and challenges. It might mean creating innovation time, where people can pursue projects unrelated to their primary responsibilities. The goal isn't to eliminate all structure and hierarchy. Many creative breakthroughs require significant coordination and resource allocation that only strong organizations can provide. The goal is to ensure that structure serves creativity rather than constraining it, and that hierarchy facilitates better decision-making rather than suppressing valuable input. Remember that culture change happens through accumulated small actions rather than dramatic policy announcements. Every meeting where leaders genuinely listen to dissenting views, every promotion of someone who thinks differently, every failure that's treated as learning rather than punishment, these moments gradually reshape organizational DNA. Strong cultures that embrace intellectual diversity, reward thoughtful dissent, and maintain genuine curiosity about alternative approaches become innovation engines that sustain competitive advantage across changing market conditions. The final step in the creative journey, actually making change happen, often generates the most intense emotions and resistance. This is where dreams meet reality, where ideas face their ultimate test. Understanding how to navigate these final challenges can mean the difference between breakthrough success and heartbreaking failure. Lewis Pugh, the extreme swimmer who tackles freezing oceans to raise environmental awareness, faced terror before his Arctic swim. The water temperature was life-threatening, the mission seemed impossible, and every instinct screamed at him to abandon the attempt. But Pugh discovered something powerful about managing fear. You don't have to eliminate it. You can transform it. Fear and excitement create remarkably similar physiological responses. Your heart rate increases, adrenaline flows, and your body prepares for action. The difference lies not in your body's reaction, but in how your mind interprets these sensations. Instead of trying to calm himself down, which rarely works when facing genuine challenges, Pugh reframed his fear as excitement. He told himself, "I am excited rather than I am calm." This simple shift allowed him to harness his body's natural readiness for action instead of fighting against it. This technique works because it acknowledges reality while changing your relationship to it. When you're about to share a revolutionary idea or launch an innovative project, you will feel nervous. That's normal and healthy. The goal isn't to feel perfectly calm, it's to channel that energy productively. When building support for your ideas, sometimes the most powerful approach is stepping back and letting others tell the story. If your innovation helps people, ask those beneficiaries to share their experiences directly. Their authentic testimonies carry weight that no presentation slides can match. People trust stories from peers more than promotional messages from creators. When someone explains how your idea solved their real problem or improved their actual life, audiences connect emotionally with the possibilities. But what about apathy? Those frustrating situations where people seem indifferent to problems that desperately need solving. The key is helping them see what they're currently losing, not just what they could gain. Most people have adapted to current problems and don't fully recognize their cost. Before presenting your solution, help them understand the true price of the status quo. Show them what inefficiencies are costing them, what opportunities they're missing, what risks they're accepting. Once people recognize that doing nothing has serious consequences, they become motivated to explore alternatives. Your innovative solution suddenly looks less risky than continuing with broken systems. Anger can be a powerful motivator for change, but it needs to be channeled carefully. Anger directed at opponents often backfires, creating defensiveness and resistance. But anger directed at injustice, fury at problems that hurt innocent people, can fuel sustained commitment to positive change. The most effective change agents aren't motivated by hatred of enemies, but by love for victims. They stay focused on helping people rather than punishing opponents. This approach maintains moral clarity while building broader coalitions of support. Trying to release anger through aggressive actions often intensifies rather than reduces it. Better to channel that energy into constructive work that actually addresses underlying problems. Remember that making change happen is ultimately about service, not ego. The goal isn't to prove you're right or to gain personal recognition. It's to solve problems, help people, and make the world slightly better than you found it. This service orientation helps you persist through setbacks and criticism. When you're focused on the people your innovation will help, temporary obstacles feel less overwhelming. You're not just defending your idea, you're fighting for something larger than yourself. What emotions are you experiencing as you think about implementing your creative ideas? How might you reframe those feelings to fuel action rather than paralysis? As we reach the end of this journey through the landscape of creativity and innovation, one truth emerges above all others. Originality is not a gift bestowed on the lucky few. It's a choice available to everyone willing to question, explore, and act. We've shattered the myth that creativity requires reckless risk-taking. The most successful innovators are strategic thinkers who build safety nets while exploring new possibilities. They understand that small acts of questioning, something as simple as choosing a different web browser, can reveal an original mindset that leads to extraordinary outcomes. We've learned that generating good ideas isn't about perfection on the first try, but about volume and persistence. Even the creators themselves often can't judge which of their ideas will succeed. The path to breakthrough innovation runs through many attempts, constant feedback, and willingness to iterate. The art of sharing ideas requires more than passion. It demands credibility, timing, and strategic thinking. Build your reputation, acknowledge weaknesses in your proposals, and connect your innovations to values people already hold dear. Timing isn't about rushing to be first. It's about letting ideas mature while preparing for the right moment to act. Sometimes strategic delay creates more value than hurried action. Success requires networks of supporters who share your methods, if not your exact goals. Focus on converting opponents rather than managing difficult allies, and remember that shared approaches often matter more than shared objectives. Your creative capacity was shaped by childhood experiences, but it's never too late to develop new attitudes toward risk and innovation. Strong cultures can either kill creativity or amplify it, depending on whether they welcome dissent and value truth over harmony. Finally, making change happen requires transforming fear into excitement, letting beneficiaries tell their stories, and staying focused on service rather than ego. The world needs your unique perspective and creative solutions. The only question remaining is, what will you choose to create? Your creative journey starts with a single step, and that step begins right here in our community. If this story has sparked something inside you, a new way of thinking, a forgotten dream, or the courage to share an idea you've been holding back, then we've accomplished something beautiful together. Hit that like button if you're ready to embrace your creative power. Drop a comment below and tell us about one innovative idea you're excited to explore. And don't forget to subscribe to Epic English Stories, because we're just getting started on this incredible journey of discovery and growth. Your creativity matters. Your ideas matter. You matter. Now go out there and create something amazing. The world is waiting for what only you can bring to it. See you in the next story, my creative friend. Remember, creativity isn't about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to begin.